The evening air was cool as Officer Tom Mercer drove his patrol car down Pine Street. The sun had just set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Tom had been on the force for nearly 20 years, and Friday night patrols had become as familiar to him as his own reflection. He took a sip from his coffee cup, grimacing at the now cold liquid. The radio crackled with routine chatter as he scanned the roads. That's when he spotted it, an old blue pickup truck with a broken taillight. The red plastic cover was missing, exposing the naked bulb that blinked unevenly as the truck rumbled down the road. Tom sighed. It was such a small thing, but rules were rules. He flipped on his lights, not bothering with the siren for something so minor. The pickup's brake lights flashed, and the vehicle pulled over smoothly to the shoulder of the road. At least the driver wasn't giving him trouble. Tom radioed in his location and the license plate number, standard procedure, before stepping out of his cruiser. The cool evening breeze ruffled his uniform as his shoes crunched on the gravel. His hand rested casually near his holster, not out of any real concern, but from years of habit and training. As he approached the truck, Tom noticed the bumper stickers right away. Proud veteran, I served, and a faded unit insignia he recognized from his brother's time in the service. The license plate confirmed it, a veteran's special issue with a small American flag in the corner. Tom's step slowed slightly. He had a soft spot for military folks. His younger brother had served 2 tours overseas. License and registration, please, Tom said, shining his flashlight briefly through the driver's window before lowering it to avoid blinding the man inside. The beam caught the driver's face for just a moment, a man probably in his early 40s with a military-style buzz cut that was starting to grow out. His face looked weathered, with deep lines around his eyes that suggested he'd seen more than his fair share of hardship. The driver nodded without speaking and reached slowly for the glove compartment. His hands were shaking slightly, Tom noticed. Not the nervous shake of someone hiding something, but the persistent tremor of someone under constant stress. Just a broken taillight, Tom explained, keeping his voice casual. Easy fix. Probably just need to pick up a new cover at the auto parts store. The driver handed over his license and registration without meeting Tom's eyes. Yes, sir, he said quietly. I noticed it last week. Haven't had the chance to fix it yet. Tom glanced at the license. Robert Wilson. The photo showed a younger version of the man before him, with fewer lines on his face and a spark in his eyes that seemed to have dimmed. I'll be right back, Mr. Wilson, Tom said, walking back to his cruiser to run the standard checks. Sitting in his patrol car, Tom typed the information into his computer. The screen flashed, and Tom's eyebrows rose in surprise. Robert Wilson had 3 unpaid parking tickets, normally not a big deal, but the system showed a bench warrant had been issued when he failed to appear in court for them. Tom stared at the screen, then back at the pickup truck. The veteran sat perfectly still, hands back on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. He didn't fidget or check his mirrors repeatedly like people who were planning to flee often did. Protocol was clear. With an active warrant, Tom was supposed to make an arrest. It should have been straightforward. Another day, another arrest. But something about the stillness of the man in the truck made Tom pause. 20 years on the job had given him a good sense about people, and his instincts were telling him there was more to this situation. Taking a deep breath, Tom stepped out of his cruiser, his hand now resting more deliberately on his holster. As he approached the truck again, he noticed the army jacket hanging in the back window and a small photo taped to the dashboard, several soldiers standing together, arms around each other's shoulders, desert sand stretching out behind them. Mr. Wilson, Tom called out, his voice now carrying the official tone he used when situations turned serious. I need you to step out of the vehicle, please. The moment had shifted from a simple traffic stop to something much more complicated. Neither man knew it yet, but this ordinary Friday evening was about to become anything but routine. Step out of the vehicle, Mr. Wilson. Officer Tom repeated, his voice firmer this time. The words hung in the air between them. Robert Wilson didn't move. His knuckles turned white as his grip on the steering wheel tightened. The only sound was the soft ticking of the truck's cooling engine and the occasional crackle of the police radio from Tom's patrol car. Sir, I need you to comply, Tom said, shifting his weight slightly. Years of experience had taught him to read people, and right now, Everything about Robert's body language was setting off warning bells. Not the kind that suggested danger, the kind that suggested fear. Finally, Robert turned to look at him. Under the harsh glow of the streetlight, Tom could see the man's face clearly for the first time. His eyes were red-rimmed, like he hadn't slept in days. There was something else there too, a haunted look that Tom had seen before in his brother's eyes when he first came home from overseas. "Officer," Robert said, his voice surprisingly steady despite his trembling hands, "I can't do that right now." Tom's hand moved instinctively toward his holster. It wasn't a threatening gesture, just the natural reaction of a cop who'd been in too many unpredictable situations. "Sir, this isn't a request. There's a warrant out for your arrest due to unpaid tickets and failure to appear in court." A flash of confusion crossed Robert's face. "Tickets? I never received any court summons." "The system shows 3 parking violations from downtown," Tom explained, maintaining his professional tone. "When you didn't show up for the hearing date, the judge issued a bench warrant. It's standard procedure." Robert closed his eyes for a moment, as if processing this information was physically painful. "I've been staying with my sister since I lost my apartment. Must not have gotten the notices." He opened his eyes again, looking directly at Tom. "But I still can't get out of this truck. Not tonight. Please." There was something in his voice, not defiance, not anger, but a quiet desperation that made Tom pause. In 19 years on the force, he'd heard every excuse imaginable. This didn't sound like an excuse. It sounded like a man on the edge. "Look," Tom said, lowering his voice slightly, "I understand you might be going through something, but I have a job to do. The law doesn't give me much wiggle room here." Robert nodded slowly. "I get that. I respect it. I respected the rules too when I wore a uniform." He glanced at the photo on his dashboard. "But sometimes the rules don't account for everything." A car drove past them, its headlights briefly illuminating the inside of the truck. Tom caught a glimpse of something on the passenger seat, prescription bottles, several of them, with VA hospital labels. "Are you feeling all right, Mr. Wilson?" Tom asked, his tone softening slightly. Robert let out a humorless laugh that sounded more like a sigh. "No, officer. I haven't felt all right in 40 years, and especially not today." Something about the way he said it, the rawness of it, made Tom take a step back. He'd been trained to maintain control of every situation, but right now, his instincts were telling him to listen rather than act. "What's special about today?" Tom asked. Robert's eyes drifted to the photo on his dashboard again. 4 years ago today, I lost half my squad in an ambush outside Kandahar." His voice was flat, as if he'd gone somewhere far away in his mind. "I was their sergeant. I was supposed to bring them all home." The night seemed to grow quieter. Even the distant traffic noise faded away as the weight of Robert's words settled between them. Tom looked at the veteran with new eyes. The trembling hands, the medication, the haunted look, it all started to make sense. He'd seen his own brother struggle after coming home. The nightmares, the panic attacks, the way certain spaces, like the backseat of a car, could suddenly become unbearable. "If you put me in the back of your patrol car tonight," Robert said quietly, meeting Tom's gaze, "I can't guarantee how I'll react. And that's not something either of us wants to find out." Tom stood at a crossroads. The officer in him knew what protocol demanded. But the man, the brother of a veteran, sensed there was much more to this story than a few unpaid parking tickets. Officer Tom leaned against the truck's door, his stance softening slightly. The radio on his shoulder crackled, but he ignored it. Something told him this moment required his full attention. "Tell me about it," he said quietly, no longer sounding like a cop making an arrest, but like a person genuinely wanting to understand. Robert took a deep breath, as if gathering strength. His hands finally released their death grip on the steering wheel and fell into his lap. "I served 3 tours," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion swimming in his eyes. 2 in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan. The last one, he shook his head slightly. The last one was the hardest. Tom nodded, waiting patiently as Robert collected his thoughts. The veteran's face seemed to age as memories washed over him. "We were a tight unit," Robert continued. 12 of us patrolled together for months. You get close, you know? Closer than family sometimes. You have to be." He reached for the photo on his dashboard and carefully handed it to Tom. The picture showed a group of soldiers in desert camouflage, arms around each other, mountains rising in the distance behind them. They were smiling, dusty and tired-looking, but clearly bonded by something deeper than just serving together. 40 years ago today, we were escorting a supply convoy, Robert said, his voice dropping lower. We'd done it dozens of times, routine mission, until it wasn't. Tom studied the photo, trying to imagine these smiling young men in the chaos of an ambush. IED hit the lead vehicle, then the shooting started. Robert spoke in short, clipped sentences, as if each word cost him something. We were pinned down for 3 hours. Called for air support, but the weather was bad. They couldn't reach us. A car passed by, momentarily flooding the truck's interior with light. Tom noticed a thin scar running along Robert's temple, partially hidden by his hair. By the time help arrived, 5 of my men were gone. Robert pointed to faces in the photo, young men whose futures had been erased in a single afternoon. Johnson had a baby girl he never got to meet. Chen was 2 weeks from going home to get married. Rivera had just been accepted to college on the GI Bill. Tom handed the photo back carefully, treating it with the reverence it deserved. The docs at the VA call it PTSD, Robert continued. Fancy name for feeling like you're still there sometimes, for waking up screaming, for not being able to sit in small spaces without feeling like the walls are closing in. His voice caught slightly, for wondering why you made it home when they didn't. Tom thought of his brother, remembering the night he found him sitting in the backyard at 3 a.m. because the bedroom felt too much like a box. How he'd jump at loud noises for months after coming home. The meds help some days, Robert said, gesturing to the prescription bottles. Other days, nothing helps, especially today. He looked up at Tom with tired eyes. That's why I can't get into the back of your car tonight. Not on this day. I don't know what would happen, but it wouldn't be good for either of us. Tom stood silently for a moment, processing everything he'd heard. Part of him, the by-the-book officer who'd followed procedures for 19 years, knew what he was supposed to do. The warrant was real. The law was clear. But another part of him, the human part, the part with a brother who'd come back from war different than he'd left, understood exactly what Robert was saying. Your unit, Tom said suddenly. Which one was it? Robert looked surprised at the question. 2nd Infantry, 45th Battalion. Why? Tom felt something like electricity run through him. Where exactly in Kandahar? Eastern Province mainly. Small forward operating base near the Arghandab River. Robert's eyes narrowed slightly. How do you know about Kandahar? Tom's mind raced as pieces started falling into place. The timing, the location, the unit, it all matched the stories his brother had told him. Stories about a surgeon who had saved several men despite sustaining injuries himself. A surgeon his brother described as the reason I'm still breathing. My younger brother, Tom said slowly. He was stationed there in 2018. He was a communications specialist. Robert's expression changed, a flash of recognition crossing his face. Skinny kid from Ohio. Always had those peppermints. Tom felt his heart skip a beat. Yeah, that's him. His name is David. David Mercer. Robert's eyes widened in disbelief. David Mercer, he repeated softly, as if testing the name. Skinny kid with glasses who could fix any radio, no matter how shut up it got. Tom felt goosebumps rise on his arms despite the mild evening air. That's him, he confirmed, his voice slightly unsteady. He's not so skinny anymore, though. Got married last year. Works in it now. The tension between them shifted, transformed into something neither man had expected. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, connecting dots, rearranging their understanding of this chance encounter on a quiet roadside. Your brother, Robert said finally, he was there that day. The ambush. Tom nodded. His brother had told him bits and pieces about that terrible day, but never the whole story. It was too painful, David had said. Some things you just can't put into words. He was in the second vehicle, Robert continued, his gaze distant as if watching the scene replay in his mind. When the shooting started, their truck took heavy fire. Radio was hit. Communications were down. He paused, swallowing hard. Your brother crawled out under fire to grab a working radio from the lead vehicle. Caught a piece of shrapnel in his leg doing it, but he got that radio working. called in our position. Tom felt his throat tighten. David had never mentioned being wounded. He'd come home with a slight limp that he blamed on a training accident. If he hadn't gotten that radio working, Robert trailed off. The implication hung in the air between them. None of them might have made it home. "And you?" Tom asked. "David told me about a surgeon who pulled 3 injured men to safety," said the guy took a bullet doing it. His eyes went to the scar on Robert's temple. Robert touched the mark self-consciously. "Wasn't a bullet, just some shrapnel. Your brother exaggerates." But Tom knew from the way Robert averted his eyes that his brother hadn't exaggerated at all. "He has a picture of you," Tom said suddenly, remembering. "On his bookshelf. You're standing next to him at some kind of ceremony." "Purple Heart ceremony, probably," Robert said with a small, sad smile. "They gave us matching ones. Mine's in a drawer somewhere." The patrol car's radio crackled again, louder this time. A voice came through asking for a status update. Tom hesitated, then stepped away from the truck to respond. "Still on scene with that traffic stop," he said into his shoulder mic. "Situation is under control. Need a few more minutes." "Copy that," the dispatcher replied. "Everything okay out there?" Tom looked back at Robert, who was watching him with a guarded expression. "Yeah," Tom said after a moment. "Everything's fine." He walked back to the truck, his mind racing. The world had just gotten very small and very complicated. This wasn't just any veteran with PTSD and a bench warrant. This was the man his brother credited with saving his life. "What happens now, Officer Mercer?" Robert asked quietly. Tom leaned against the truck, suddenly feeling the weight of his badge and the limitations of the system he represented. Protocol said he should arrest Robert, put him in the back of the patrol car, and take him to the station to process the warrant. But protocol didn't account for nights like this, for connections like this, for the debt he owed this man. "I'm trying to figure that out," Tom admitted. Robert nodded, understanding the officer's dilemma. "If it helps, I'll turn myself in tomorrow morning. First thing. I can't do it tonight." Tom studied the man his brother had described as the bravest person he'd ever met. In the harsh glow of the streetlight, Robert Wilson looked exhausted, a man carrying burdens most people couldn't imagine. But there was still strength there in the way he held himself, in his willingness to face consequences, just not tonight, not on this anniversary. "Let me make a call," Tom decided, pulling out his phone instead of using the radio. "My surgeon's a reasonable guy. He was military too, before joining the force. Maybe we can work something out." As he dialed the number, Tom thought about what his brother would want him to do, about what was right, beyond what was simply legal, about second chances and debts that could never truly be repaid. "This is Officer Mercer," he said when his surgeon answered. "I've got a situation here I could use some guidance on. It's complicated." Tom walked a few paces away from the truck, phone pressed to his ear. The night had grown cooler, and he could see his breath forming small clouds as he explained the situation to Sergeant Bill Harris. "So you're telling me this guy has a bench warrant, but you don't want to bring him in?" The surgeon's gruff voice came through the phone. "It's more complicated than that, sir," Tom replied, glancing back at Robert, who sat motionless in his truck. "He's a veteran with severe PTSD. Today's the anniversary of a combat incident where he lost several men under his command." "That's unfortunate, Mercer, but the Lord doesn't take a day off for sad anniversaries." Tom took a deep breath. "Sir, there's more to it. This man, Robert Wilson, he served with my brother David in Afghanistan. He's the surgeon who saved David's life during that ambush near Kandahar." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "The one your brother always talks about?" Sergeant Harris finally asked, his tone softening slightly. "Yes, sir. The very same." Tom watched as Robert stared at the photo on his dashboard, lost in memories Tom could only imagine. "He's in pretty rough shape tonight. Says he can't handle confined spaces, especially the back of a patrol car." "I believe him." The surgeon sighed heavily. Tom could picture him rubbing his forehead the way he did when faced with a tough call. After 25 years on the force, Bill Harris knew that police work existed in shades of gray, despite what the rulebook said. "What exactly are you asking for, Mercer?" Tom had been thinking about this since the moment he realized who Robert was. "I'm asking for some discretion, sir. The warrant is for unpaid parking tickets. He missed the court date because notices were sent to an old address. He's been staying with his sister since losing his apartment. And you verified this? I believe him, Tom said firmly, and I'm willing to take responsibility here. Another long pause followed. Tom could hear dispatch calls in the background at the station. What's your proposal? Harris finally asked. Let me escort him home tonight. I'll take his keys, make sure he's not a danger to himself or others. He's agreed to come in voluntarily tomorrow morning to sort out the warrant. I can pick him up myself before my shift. Tom waited, knowing he was asking for special treatment. Knowing that any other night, with any other person, he probably wouldn't be making this call. You realize what you're asking breaks protocol, Harris said, though his voice lacked its usual sternness. I do, sir, but I also know that sometimes protocol doesn't account for unique circumstances. The sergeant cleared his throat. Your brother, he still has nightmares about that day, doesn't he? Yes, sir, 4 years later, and he still wakes up shouting sometimes. The weight of that statement hung in the air. Both men understood what wasn't being said, that wounds from war didn't always bleed, that some scars were invisible but no less real. All right, Mercer, Harris finally said. Here's what we'll do. Document everything. Get his current address, his sister's contact information, have him sign a statement agreeing to appear at the station tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp. You'll be personally responsible for making sure he shows up. If he doesn't, it's on you. Understood, sir. Thank you. And Mercer, Harris added, tell him thanks for what he did for your brother. Tom smiled slightly. I will, sir. He ended the call and stood for a moment, watching his breath create small clouds in the night air. This wasn't how he'd expected his evening to go. A simple traffic stop had turned into something far more complicated, a collision of his professional life and his personal gratitude of rules and humanity. Walking back to the truck, Tom saw Robert looking at him with guarded hope. So, Robert asked quietly. Tom leaned against the door. My sergeant and I have come to an arrangement. No one's getting arrested tonight. Relief washed over Robert's face, but he remained cautious. What's the catch? You come in tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to address the warrant properly. I'll pick you up myself. Tom pulled out his notepad. I'll need your current address, your sister's contact information, and you'll need to sign a statement agreeing to appear. Robert nodded. I can do that. I keep my word, Officer Mercer. I know you do, Tom said, and he meant it. And it's Tom, just Tom tonight. For the first time since he pulled the truck over, Robert's shoulders relaxed slightly. The change was subtle but noticeable, the difference between a man bracing for a blow and a man offered an unexpected kindness. After Robert signed the statement, Tom handed back his license and registration, but kept the truck keys. I'll drive you home, Tom said. We can come back for your truck tomorrow morning on the way to the station. Robert nodded, gathering his medication bottles and the photo from the dashboard. As he stepped out of the truck, Tom noticed his slight limp, another invisible souvenir from a wall most people only saw on the news. The drive to Robert's sister's house was quiet at first. The patrol car's interior lights cast a blue glow across their faces. Tom could sense Robert's discomfort at sitting in the front passenger seat of a police vehicle, a place usually reserved for fellow officers, not civilians. Your brother, Robert said finally, breaking the silence. How's he really doing? Tom glanced over, surprised by the question. Most people in Robert's situation would be worried about themselves, not asking about someone else. He has good days and bad days, Tom answered honestly. The nightmares were really bad the first year. He'd stay up for days sometimes, afraid to sleep. But he got help, joined a veterans group. Things got better. Robert nodded, looking out the window at the passing houses. That's good. He was a good kid. Smart. Shouldn't have been there at all, really. Too gentle for that place. Tom thought about his brother, the boy who used to collect injured birds and nurse them back to health, who cried when they had to put down their childhood dog. Who came back from Afghanistan with harder eyes and a quieter laugh. He wasn't the only one who needed help when he got back, Tom said carefully. You getting any support, Robert? Besides the meds. Robert smiled faintly. The VA has me seeing someone twice a month. It helps some days. Other days, he gestured vaguely. Other days the world feels too small and too loud all at once. They turned onto a quiet residential street lined with modest homes. Robert pointed to a small blue house with a well-kept garden. "That's my sister's place," he said. "She took me in after things got bad. Been trying to get back on my feet, but jobs are tough when your mind sometimes takes you back to places you don't want to go." Tom pulled into the driveway and put the car in park, but didn't immediately unlock the doors. Something was bothering him. A persistent thought that wouldn't let go. "The system failed you," he said suddenly, the words coming out before he could stop them. "And I won't be another part of that failure." Robert looked at him, surprised. "These parking tickets, the bench warrant, it's all bureaucratic nonsense," Tom continued. "You served your country, saved lives including my brother's, and came home to what? Paperwork and red tape and no real support." The passion in Tom's voice surprised even himself. 19 years on the force had taught him to keep his opinions to himself, to enforce the law regardless of how he felt about it. But tonight had changed something. "I appreciate that," Robert said quietly. "But you've already done more than most would. Breaking protocol, calling your sergeant, driving me home. Don't risk your job over some parking tickets." Tom reached into his pocket and pulled out his card. He wrote his personal cell number on the back. "Tomorrow, we'll go to the station and sort out this warrant," he said, handing Robert the card. "But after that, I want to help you navigate the system. There are programs for veterans that the courts don't always tell you about. Ways to get the charges reduced or dismissed. My brother went through something similar when he first got back." Robert took the card, studying it for a moment. "Why would you do this for me?" Tom thought about his brother's nightmares, about the photo of fallen soldiers on Robert's dashboard, about the invisible wounds that didn't stop bleeding when the war ended. "Because someone did it for my brother," he said simply. "And because you deserve better than to be treated like a criminal for missing some paperwork while you're fighting battles most people can't even imagine." The porch light of the house came on, and a woman appeared in the doorway, Robert's sister, wondering about the police car in her driveway. "I should go in," Robert said. "She worries." Tom nodded and unlocked the doors. 9 a.m. tomorrow. "I'll be here." As Robert got out of the car, he paused and looked back at Tom. "Your brother was lucky to have you waiting for him when he came home. Not everyone has that." The simple truth of those words hit Tom hard. He thought of all the Roberts out there, men and women who came home from war to find no one waiting, no one who understood, no one to help them fight the new battles they faced. "Get some rest," Tom said. "Tomorrow's a new day." He watched as Robert limped up the walkway to his sister's house, wondering what other stories were out there, waiting to be heard if only someone would take the time to listen. 3 months had passed since that night by the roadside. Tom sat in the back row of the community center, watching as Robert stood at the podium addressing the small crowd. The Veterans Support Group met here every Tuesday evening, and today was special. Robert was leading the session for the first time. "When Officer Mercer pulled me over that night," Robert was saying, his voice steady and clear, "I thought it was rock bottom. Warrant for my arrest, anniversary of losing my men, nowhere left to go but down." He paused, making eye contact with various people around the room. "I never expected that traffic stop would change everything." Tom smiled quietly from his seat. Robert looked different now, standing straighter, clean-shaven, eyes clearer. The haunted look hadn't completely disappeared, but it had softened like an old photograph fading with time. "The next morning, Officer Mercer didn't just take me to the station," Robert continued. "He walked me through the whole process, spoke to the judge personally about my situation, explained about my PTSD, about missing the notices because I'd lost my housing." Tom remembered that morning well. The judge, an older woman whose son had served in Iraq, had been understanding. The fines were reduced, a payment plan arranged. More importantly, she had connected Robert with the county's Veterans Assistance Program, something he hadn't known existed. But it didn't stop there, Robert said, a hint of amazement still in his voice. "Officer Mercer introduced me to his brother David, yeah, the same David I served with, who works at a tech company that was looking for a security consultant. Someone who understands both physical security and communication systems." A ripple of appreciative murmurs went through the room. Tom glanced around at the faces, men and women of different ages, races, and backgrounds, united by their service and their struggles after coming home. Some nodded in understanding. Others looked hopeful, as if wondering if such good fortune might find them too. The job isn't just a paycheck, Robert explained, his hands steady now where they had once trembled. It's purpose. It's waking up knowing I'm still protecting people, just in a different way. And the best part is they let me take Tuesday afternoons off to come here and talk with all of you. He gestured around the room at the circle of chairs filled with veterans at various stages of their journey home. That traffic stop taught me something, Robert said. It taught me that sometimes help comes from unexpected places, and that your darkest moment, the moment when you're sure everything's falling apart, can actually be the turning point. After the meeting ended, people lingered, drinking coffee from styrofoam cups and talking in small groups. Tom watched as several veterans approached Robert, sharing their own stories, asking questions, looking to him as proof that things could get better. "You didn't have to come today," Robert said when he finally made his way over to where Tom stood. "I know you had that training session at the academy." Tom shrugged. "I rescheduled. Wouldn't have missed this." Robert smiled. "How's the new department protocol coming along?" Since that night, Tom had been working with his surgeon to develop new guidelines for handling situations involving veterans in crisis. The Wilson Protocol, they called it informally, a set of steps that prioritized connection and support over immediate enforcement when appropriate. "The chief approved it yesterday," Tom said proudly. "Starting next month, every officer in the department gets trained on how to recognize PTSD symptoms and de-escalate situations involving combat veterans. We're partnering with the VA to bring in specialists for the training." Robert nodded, clearly moved. "So my messed up parking tickets actually did some good in the world." "More than you know," Tom confirmed. 3 precincts in neighboring counties have already asked for copies of the protocol. This could spread statewide. They walked outside together into the early evening sunshine. David was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his car, waving when he spotted them. "Never thought I'd see the day," Robert mused, looking between the two brothers. "When I was over there, I used to dream about coming home, but I never had a clear picture of what home would look like. Never imagined it would take a traffic stop and an arrest warrant to finally find it." Tom clapped him gently on the shoulder. "Sometimes the long way home is the only way there." As they walked toward David, Tom reflected on how a single moment of compassion, one decision to listen rather than simply enforce, had created ripples beyond anything he could have imagined. Sometimes the most important part of wearing the badge wasn't the authority it represented, but the humanity it could serve.